Hello, we begin in Ukraine, where there has been more unrest and confrontation between anti-government protesters and police in the capital, Kiev. Demonstrators surrounded the International Convention Center just outside the police barricades. Opposition leaders say the police were using it as a base to launch attacks. Protesters threw Molotov cocktails into the building. And the security forces were allowed to leave the convention center after negotiations between government and the opposition. Well, hundreds of activists have since entered that building and are now occupying it. Take a look at the scene right now in Kiev. The violence came as the Ukrainian opposition rejected a compromise deal that was offered by the president. Viktor Yanukovich had offered top cabinet jobs to opposition leaders to try and diffuse political tensions in the country. Let's find out the latest and speak to Sue Turton, who's joining us from Kiev. And despite that offer, Sue, by the president, protests continue. What's the latest?
Yes, well, despite that offer, as you say, violence kicked out into the small hours of the morning. There was a rally behind me in Independence Square after the top opposition leaders came back from those negotiations on Saturday with President Viktor Yanukovich. And they put to the people here what they'd been offered, as you say, these top jobs in the government and various other concessions, releasing the detained protesters in sort of quid pro quo for saying move away from the front lines, come out of the occupied buildings. The people weren't happy, the opposition leaders weren't happy. The bottom line, everybody we spoke to here in the square was, we just want the president to leave. So that was the rally, and then the people, or at least many of them, went down towards European Square, which is across to my left, to make their way towards where the Parliament Street is, where the main clashes have been. But on the way there, there's the convention centre. They know that the police have been using that area as a sort of base, and these clashes ensued with them breaking through the windows, throwing in fireworks and Molotov cocktails. And it took one of the leaders, Vitaly Klitschko, to go into the building to negotiate the police to be allowed to go out without being harmed. That all happened overnight. Very quiet. I think you've seen pictures really of it looking very quiet on the front line. There are still quite a number of protesters up there because they know they need to keep that line. They need to have a presence there if the police aren't going to do something like push through their barricades and try and take back this area. But at the moment, and an easy calm, I suppose you could call it, on the streets of Kiev.
So, Sue, then what does all of this mean in terms of the bigger political picture? And I suppose Tuesday, we understand, is a big day.
Yes, the opposition leaders are calling Tuesday Judgment Day because President Yanukovych last week on the first round of talks offered to have this emergency session of Parliament, calling the MPs back early to Parliament. And that was he was saying because he wanted them to debate these new laws that had been rushed through just a matter of days earlier. These new laws which make the tents behind me illegal because you're not allowed to protest with putting tents in public squares, wearing the masks and the helmets. That's also illegal. So he's kind of criminalised the protesters, and he's now offering to say, well, maybe those laws should be debated in Parliament. He's also offered to shake his cabinet up, change the jobs around. But I have to say, he's already humiliated his own government because in the negotiations on Saturday, he offered one of the leaders, Yatsenyuk, the Prime Minister's job. And of course, he already has a Prime Minister. Azarov is his Prime Minister. And goodness knows what he said to Azarov whilst he was offering this job to one of the opposition leaders. They've turned that offer down, but we don't know really what's left as the cabinet, who's still on his side. We've already seen 5 MPs turn away from his regional party. Opposition are really hoping at that session on Tuesday, more people will turn away and what they would say, respect the views of the people and really call for presidential elections to be brought in as soon as possible.
All right, Sue, thank you. Sue Turton reporting from Kiev.